This is my review of the Swiss Army Victorinox multi-tools and the Leatherman Wingman. And the Victorinox multi-tool here is a Victorinox Swiss Army Swiss tool. Now, the one I used to have was a Swiss Army Spirit X, and the difference is the implements it had. The quality of the two Victorinoxes are pretty much identical. Now, the scissors on the Spirit X were high quality scissors, and the other implements on there worked great. I have used this serrated blade on the Victorinox here. It has been very useful for cutting things that the smooth blade is not quite as good at cutting. Now this over here, the Leatherman Wingman. Now there are different Leathermans, and there are Leathermans of higher quality. Let me point out a few things. In terms of quality, I have a broken if you can see it, a broken Phillips head screwdriver on here. That was from turning I believe it was a 3-inch screw, and it wasn't strong enough. Granted, that was heavy use. For normal use, it would be fine. The Victorinox here has a heavy-duty Phillips head screwdriver that will hold up. It'll grip the screw real good, and it'll hold up. Also, the pliers on the Leatherman, on this particular model, the Wingman, they do not come all the way back. As you can see, there's a gap when the tool is closed. So it doesn't cut good unless you pull a wire back to the cutting edge. You have to pull the cutting edge back. Whereas on the Victorinox, the cutting edge comes all the way back so you can cut easily. Now this cutting edge is different than the Spirit X, because the Spirit X has a flat cutting edge. This one has a wavy one. Both work great. And then, as you can tell, when I close the pliers shut, all the implements can be opened. You don't have to open the pliers to open the implements. That's one thing I really like about the Swiss Army. And there is one model of Leatherman like that. as you can tell on the Leatherman, when I snap the pliers shut, only the scissors and the blade are accessible when the pliers are shut. This thing has to open for any of the others to open. And may I point out, on the Leatherman, these scissors are kind of warped. I don't know whether they came that way or whether through use they got warped. But there's a gap between these, so it is only, these cutter edges are only against each other at the tip. So if you bring something to the tip, you can cut it, but if you bring something all the way back, it doesn't cut. So the scissors are inferior on the Leathermans, or at least on this particular model. So I hope that was helpful. There is a heavy-duty Leatherman, and I have not tried it. The difference with the heavy-duty one, how it differs from this one, is the heavy-duty one has replaceable cutting edges, and the heavy-duty one has replaceable um, Phillips heads. As far as I can remember when researching. So the other thing I want to point out, the difference, the file, the double-sided file on the Victorinox, one side has lines, the other side is like a regular file. And this file works really great. Now on the Leatherman, the file on this one on one side you have the ruler, on the other side you have the file, but these are lines. And what you're trying to file can slide down the line and just slip right off of there. So it's not quite as good of a file as the Victorinox. So my experience with this Leatherman and these Victorinoxes, in my experience, the Victorinox is higher quality. And it impresses me. Both models do. Both the Spirit X and the Leatherman. And I would like to point out the locking feature. All of these things lock, and there's a slide you pull back to unlock it. On the Leatherman Wingman, the only things that lock are the blade and the scissors. And they have these tabs here. You have to push them down to close it. That's the only thing that locks on these Leathermans, or at least on this one and some of the others, is the scissors and the cutting edge. So that is my review, and I have a Swiss Army knife here. A little brief history lesson. It started with the Swiss Army knife, and Mr. Leatherman owned a Swiss Army knife, and he had to, the story goes, he had to fix his car, but he needed pliers to work on his car. So he got the idea to build a pair of pliers to build a multi-tool around a pair of pliers instead of a multi-tool based on a regular pocket knife. So he needed a good pair of pliers and some extra tools. So he made the multi-tool. After he made the multi-tool, Victorinox came out with a multi-tool pliers. And since then, Leatherman and Victorinox have been competing against each other, and that's why they make good quality stuff. So if there wasn't a Swiss Army knife, there wouldn't be a Leatherman multi-tool. And if there wasn't a Leatherman multi-tool, then there wouldn't be the Victorinox Swiss Army multi-tool pliers.